NIT Tiruchirappalli welcome you all to our session in the Aurum guest lecture series. I request all the participants to keep the mics in the mute mode during the session. In case of any doubts during the session, I request you to kindly post in the chat box which would be addressed at the end of the talk. Professor Seeram Ramakrishna sir, Event Chair is among the top 3 impactful authors at the National University of Singapore NUS, which is ranked constituently among the leading world-class universities. He is an elected fellow of UK Royal Academy of Engineering, Singapore Academy of Engineering, Indian National Academy of Engineering, and ASEAN Academy of Engineering and Technology. He has an over 1,17,800 citations to his name, and Creative Analytics recognized him among the top 1% highly citated researchers in the world in material science and cross-fields categories. Microsoft Academic ranked him among the top 25 authors over the 3 million material researchers worldwide based on H-index. His academic leadership includes NUS's Vice President, Research Strategy, Dean of Faculty of Engineering, Director of NUS Enterprise, Director of NUS Industry License Office, and Director of NUS International Relations Office, Founding Director of NUS Bioengineering, and Founding Co-Director of NUS Nanoscience and Nanotechnology Institute. As a founding chairman, he championed the establishment, nearly equivalent to $100 million, Solar Energy Research Institute of Singapore, CERIS. He served as a board member of several national organizations, policy institutes, and tertiary education institutes. He founded the Global Engineering Deans Council while serving as a vice president of International Federation of Engineering Educators Society, IFEES. It gives me an immense pleasure to introduce our honorable guest speaker, Professor Seeram Ramakrishna sir, who has accepted to grace us with his august presence and commence the Aurum guest lecture series organized by the Metallurgical and Materials Engineering Association, NIT Tiruchirappalli. To commence the event, I would like to invite Professor Ravi Shankar sir, Head of the Department, Metallurgical and Material Science Engineering, NIT Trichy, to speak a few words.
Thank you. Sir, good afternoon, sir. So, thank you for your kind acceptance to give a lecture of a very interesting topic and more needed topic at this situation. So, I hope all our students and faculty members will get benefited by your lecture. Thank you, sir. So, now I welcome you to deliver the lecture.
Thank you, sir. I would now like to invite our guest speaker for the day, Professor Seeram Ramakrishna sir, to share his profound knowledge with us.
Professor Ravi, Navneet, as well as the organizers of Aurum Mettle NIT Trichy, thank you for inviting me to deliver the guest lecture. Good news is I have a similar background as your department and all the students. My first degree is in metallurgical engineering. Since then, I have changed to different disciplines, primarily taken interest in cross-disciplinary research and education. In this lecture, I like to share my enthusiasm with the NIT Trichy students about possible future healthcare technologies and role of intelligent materials and systems. My contact information is available here. Today, I am giving this lecture through the web platform, primarily because COVID-19 restricted international travels. Otherwise, I might be physically present at NIT Trichy, a beautiful campus. What are the lessons from the ongoing COVID-19 epidemics? Nobody is safe until everyone is safe. Mind health is not given and to be cultivated. We must care for Earth to ensure sustainability of life on the planet Earth. On the left side, I'm showing a newspaper clipping. An American 90-year-old woman, she trekked 10 kilometers in a deep snow to get her COVID-19 vaccine. That shows the determination of human beings to continue to overcome the challenges, be it COVID-19 or in the future climate change. COVID-19 has given different kind of situations. Most economies are now have been impacted severely. We call a lost generation, where a number of people feel isolated, lost opportunities. There is a sense, for example, in Europe, youth have a despair as the COVID-19 has been dragging on more than 12 months. Even in Singapore, we recognize the importance of mental health, especially in fighting COVID-19. What is clear from this kind of experiences? For human survival, air, water, and food are essential. We all know that. But COVID-19 also resurfaced the importance of social interactions for human beings to have a good quality and well-being. Here is an example where in USA, Oklahoma, one of the party-going place, they introduced plastic bubbles so that couples can still come and enjoy the ambience of music, being together with other people. I believe in India, last 12 months, despite COVID-19, people maintain high level of social interactions, and they say that is because of the higher immunity of Indian people and the food habits and the lifestyle. On top of that, they have a way of natural tendency to absorb the mental stress and go about the life. So I understood that when mind is somewhat less stressed, that would improve your immunity. In other words, your ability to mitigate challenges like COVID-19. That brings us to the main topic of my presentation. For a long time, biomaterials research is focused on health, but we believe that wellness is as important as health. So infectious diseases like COVID-19 and mental stress have been highlighted. There is also additional factor that need to be considered significantly, that is aging. In this case, if you look at my screen, it shows worldwide population trends. Somewhere around 2019, people older than 65, the proportion of the world population has crossed number of children aged 5 and below. Moving forward, next 40 years, there would be a lot more senior citizens in all countries around the world. To understand, especially the students who are mostly in the age 20 to 30, who are listening to me at NIT Trichy, if you look at your grandparents, are your parents. They would be in the age range 50 to 90. And this particular schematic shows you that a simple bone mass, or what we call bone density, changes with age. And there is a difference between a male and a female. So when your grandma fell down, she has a higher chance of bone fracture because of the gender difference. In addition, a very interesting aspect is you are in the right age where you have the peak of the health in terms of the bone density and your musculoskeletal system. In this schematic, I'm showing myself how I look right now. That is the left side of the image. And on the right side, it's a computer animated simulation projected how I will look in the future. Clearly, one important factor is loosening of the tightness of the skin, formation of the wrinkles, but that's on the surface. But if you look at the number of tissues and organs of the human body, and you see that there is a variety of changes and also medical implications that are likely to happen irrespective of who the person is. By having this knowledge, we are well prepared for the future challenges of healthcare and wellness. An important point for you to note, there is a difference between males and females. Gender plays a very important role how we age. So the pink dots refer to the females, the blue dots refer to the males. In addition to gender, genetics play a very important role, lifestyle and climate. Since we know gender plays an important role, right now, most medicines and devices were tested on male population during their development. There is a lot more opportunity for all of you, especially the students, aspiring to have a careers in biomedical area, that these devices and medicines have to be further customized, tailored for the different genders. There's an opportunity for more research in the next decades. So in this slide, I'm showing you a number of disabilities, disorders, diseases often associated with different parts of the human body. On the left side is a book which we have just released, an introduction to biomedical science and engineering. So last 50 years, between 1950 to 2000, a number of biomedical devices and biomaterials have been developed to augment, replace, or support different parts of the human body. And there would be at least more than 1 million types of devices available in the market. Last 20 years, there's a lot more deep science is applied to the biomaterials field, and that is to improve the diagnostics, stem cells, regenerative medicine, nanomedicine, tissue engineering, and bioprinting. So in all these advanced topics, biomaterials are improved so that they can enable regeneration of the functionality of the tissues and organs of the human body. Question is, going forward, humans need to think much more differently. Sometimes hyperbolic ideas are necessary for breakthrough advancement. On the left side is a It's a discussion that's going on among the scientists at Harvard University, where they think of outlandish ideas in terms of science and technology. So on that note, I believe in biomaterials field, going forward, we might have to consider intelligent biomaterials. And this is the definition we have given what is an intelligent biomaterial. In the center of my slide, I define it as intelligent biomaterials are capable of processing external signals as well as internally generated signals in order to take actions that maximize its chances of successfully achieving its own goals. More or less, that's what all the living beings do. So how do we introduce the concept of intelligence in the materials is certainly a new frontier. We have not even begun thinking in that direction. More need to be done. So on the left side, you see a typically external stimuli has been used to make what they call smart materials. They could respond to a variety of external stimuli like a mechanical force, deformation, or a light, temperature, applied magnetic field, electric field, or many other stimuli like change in chemistry. So such responsive, smart materials are already there, but we need to go from there to the next level. How do we make these materials adaptive, smarter, and intelligent? So if you begin to see what the scientists are talking about, some researchers, for example, Stefano Manisco, he talks about intelligence in plants, and he cites an example of touch me not plant, where it recognizes the external threats and it actually adjusts its own responses. They also begin to say what kind of mechanisms are there at the most basic form of life, which is a cell in our body. You might see these beautiful natural creations like peacock and butterflies and birds. They have unique colors, and these colors come because of the pigmentation. Sometimes there is no pigmentation. It is a simple architectural arrangement at the nanometer scale length. That means a million times smaller than a meter. At that scale, these natural beings adjust their physical structures, and when a light impacts on that one, thus on these structures, they produce a variety of colors. In this case is a deep blue color. And they say that deep blue is not naturally occurring in the earth. So deep blue is not a naturally occurring material in the earth's crust. So there is a need to synthesize such a unique colors, and researchers are able to do that by combining different metallic elements of the periodic table. The main point is there is some sense of organization in the nature that creates a unique functional behavior. Recently, scientists also discovered massless electrons in materials that are normally used in DVDs and CDs. So these same material, which we've been using for at least 20 years, they discovered also carry massless electrons. What it tells us is we know a lot about metals, materials, but there's a lot more need to be understood. There is a huge opportunity for young people like you to think about new ideas and new hypotheses. So now I'm taking you deep into the topic and showing you the examples. Here, what we call smart hydrogels, we make them in our laboratories, and these smart hydrogels used in biomedical field have a different stimuli responses. So on the right side, light could be a stimuli, pH could be a stimuli, or change in chemistry could be a stimuli, or many others like temperature, pressure. And they produce certain functionalities, could be used for delivering drugs as well as other sensory applications. I work on nanofibers, which are basically 100 times smaller than a typical paper thickness. So if you take a sheet of paper, if you make it 100 times smaller, you are getting into the nanometer scale. At that size range, we produce fibers, we introduce smartness into the fibers so that they could be used for example, interactive smart fibers against antimicrobial functionality of the medical devices. I'm now trying to take you to relevance of the topic to you, and I'm going to connect that about smart materials and how they are useful to the human purposes. In this slide, I am showing a variation of human intelligence with age. And the solid line is considered general intelligence. One of the dotted line is the fluid intelligence, other one is a crystallized intelligence. The good news is all of you are at the age range 20 to 30, you are having the peak intelligence level. In other words, as a student at NIT Trichy, it's your best time to learn as deeply as possible new knowledge and enhance your intelligence so that you are prepared for the future. To make it more simpler, I drew this particular schematic where we call intellectual efficiency, and as you can see that between initial age you have the highest level of intellectual efficiency. So my central message here is, since you are having the highest biological performance, it's the time for you to make best use of your time while you are studying at NIT Trichy. So now I take that idea and now build up the case where the biomaterials would come into the picture. We talked about mental wellness, we talked about mental stress. A part of that is also depends how we are thinking. According to the scientific study, in our head, about 6,000 thoughts run per day. In other words, 4 thoughts per minute. Interestingly, 95% of the thoughts are repetitive, and 80% of those are somewhat negative. On the right side, if you see how a brain functions, in an unstressed condition, your prefrontal cortex, this one, tightly controls your thoughts, emotions, and actions. When you are stressed, you have a weaker control of your thoughts, emotions, and actions. In other words, when you are at the peak of your mental well-being and you are able to manage your stress, you would be able to control your thoughts and emotions and actions. In other words, you are able to focus well. So as a student at NIT Trichy, you can focus a lot more despite COVID-19, and you could improve your knowledge, skills, as well as the necessary aspects of your future. So now I'm bringing all that into the central concept is thoughts and emotions. Since the time is limited, I would not go into the details, but main point here is our thoughts and emotions are actually influenced by a number of parameters. and that includes even a language. The kind of language you are using, your mother tongue, has an influence on the way you think. So there is a lot more scientific knowledge has been established how these variables in each bubble influences our thoughts and emotions. Interesting aspect is, if you understand your thoughts and if you use your own thinking, you can modulate your thoughts. In the future, with advances in biomaterials and intelligent systems, humans will have access to refined devices, systems, and methods to perceive and visualize own thoughts and redesign own mind. So in the remaining several slides, I will actually impress upon you with an example so that you know this is a subject which is emerging and there is a preliminary evidences are coming up. So why I said that in my previous slide, because there are advances happening in artificial intelligence, neural interfaces, quantum chips, quantum biology, psychedelics, wearables, and augmented brain. These are all scientific areas where advances are happening. For example, we work on tissue engineering a brain. So we take the cells from the human body, we provide a scaffolds on which these cells proliferate. In other words, we are engineering parts of the human brain. This can be done in the laboratory. Similarly, now with the MEG, EEG, and other external devices, you can pick up the patterns in your brain, what we call mind waves. By interpreting the mind waves using senses, you could visualize your mind, what the mind is trying to communicate. So that's an example. There is also a lot more research is going on in integrating these biomaterials and devices seamlessly with the human body, various parts of the human body. So I'm now going to give you an example we call invasive approach. That means these materials and systems are designed to be inside the human body. So here we are talking about the brain. Brain has more than 100 billion neurons and more than 1 trillion junctions, what we call synapses. These neurons together with synapses is essentially your communication channels, and they are precursors for everything you do, you feel, and think. So as I said, there are more than 100 billion neurons and 1 trillion junctions, and they communicate through electrical signals mediated by biochemicals, what we call neurotransmitters. Because of that, your finger can sense and your mind can understand what it is sensing. It can also send a signal. So our goal is to design biomaterials. They can interrogate these neurons at an individual level and pick up the electrical signals and interpret them. Here there are different types of neurons being interrogated by different types of electrodes. And nanotechnology, a variety of nanomaterials made of carbon, special metals, as well as liquid metals, and conductive polymers. And we try to reduce the resistance. In other words, we want to improve the signal to the noise ratio. So we reduce the impedance by changing the nanomaterials that are used for interrogating neurons, which are millions and billions in your body. And in this case, we are able to do how impedance can be reduced so that we have a 50 times higher signal pickup to the noise ratio. And here is the neurons, how they actually integrate with this with our nanofibers. Now we test them in animals, and this is how we do the recording. And we actually simulate different conditions on animals, for example, scratching, pinching, or flexing, and how the signals are interpreted. You can also subject to the cold condition and a hot condition. So we go deep into how these neuronal cells actually communicate. But in view of the time, I just go through them. But my whole idea of you showing so many slides to you is to impress upon you these ideas are heavily researched by many scientists, many researchers like you in the future. So these neural interfaces which are implanted, you now can imagine implanted in your ear, eyes, or hands, legs, or the brain. So different parts of the body could be integrated with these neural interfaces so that we have a better sensing of the things that are going on inside the body. In the future, we will have a lot more seamless integration of such systems with the natural living human tissues. If you want to be convinced, I want to give a best example. Elon Musk is the world's richest man, close to $150 billion personal wealth. He is the man behind Tesla. He's also the space program. You also have another company called Neuralink. Here, they devise neural interfaces meant to pick up the signals from the brains of the animals, but eventually they like to take these advances to the human beings with the hope to cure some of the diseases and ailments cannot be cured by current medical technologies. So it's not only Elon Musk, many other wealthy entrepreneurs are investing in these technologies, so as the governments. In other words, they believe there is a huge progress need to be made. When such progress is made, that would lead to better wellness and health of the human beings. And now I switch to non-invasive approach. That means you do not go inside the human body, but you place the device or instrumentation outside the human body. For example, a watch you are wearing that can track a number of your body functions. In this case, a wearable ring that can monitor your heart rate, your respiration rate, your body temperature, your movements, and also blood glucose level. So these are necessary to understand the vital functions of the human body. So with that, for example, healthcare can be reimagined. Instead of having a centralized healthcare, we could be going towards a decentralized healthcare. In COVID-19 situation, patients could not go to the hospital as they need to maintain distance. At the same time, hospitals are overcrowded. So now imagine you have a wearable each person is having that monitors the vital signs of the person, and that information is sent to the hospital, and the clinician or the medical expert look at that information and advise the patient what needs to be done. This thing is already being explored in several countries, especially due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So this is the science behind it, where we use advanced nanotechnologies in making these devices. And this is the principles based on which we make these functional devices, based on the changes in the mechanical resistance, electrical resistance, or any other concepts like frictional behavior of the moving systems. This is how we design these smart systems. And they are integrated into the measuring the body functions. And you see the examples how we are measuring. And these could be integrated into the wearables, for example, a shirt or a garment or a gloves or a cap or some other wearables of the human body. And here you see them being measured. They're also flexible so that the person can wear them. These are sensors, smart sensors made of these materials, and they sense without giving discomfort to the human being. For examples, how they are integrated, and in this case, they are measuring the temperature. And in this case, they are looking at body movements. And in this case, integrated in the contact lens as well as the medical bandages. Especially someone has a diabetes and you like to monitor how the diabetic wound is healing with time. Normally, the diabetic wounds are the hardest for healing and take several months and years and require such a smart systems for monitoring. And we could also make high sensitivity acoustic sensors so that you can also harness the sound in the neighborhood and convert that into energy so that you do not need a battery, external battery to power the sensors. And in this case, solar energy, perovskite is a special material. We can make that into yarns and fibers, and then you can weave that into the textile. So purpose of this particular unique perovskite material is to absorb the sunlight and convert that into electricity so that you can store the electricity in a battery and later on power these smart wearables. So to convince you, this is also a very interesting direction. Recently, Google invested $2 billion in acquiring Fitbit. Fitbit is a very standard product that is used for monitoring how many steps you have taken in a day and what is your heart rate and how that is changing throughout the day. It's a very popular device, wearable, that's been around for the last 10 years. And Google invested in this company. That shows they believe the wearables and health monitoring is going to be an important growth area for the companies. And recently in England, because of COVID-19, most people are working away from the offices, and we have webinars, Zoom sessions, and it's hard to know who is listening to you and how they are feeling. For example, I'm delivering my lecture, but I'm not seeing any of you, so I have no sense whether you are feeling happy, unhappy, or excited about my presentation. Now imagine you have a wearable where you could indicate to me that you are able to like the presentation and I could understand your emotion, and that becomes much more interesting to deliver webinars like this. So these kind of things are already coming up. Of course, an important aspect here with all these intelligent systems, we have to improve the privacy and security aspects. So in summary, I like to say that biomaterial field and materials field in general is changing. Perhaps in the future, it's a somewhat outlandish thinking that we might develop intelligent materials which are meant to improve the healthcare outcomes and well-being of the human beings. This is my belief and my hope that a future healthcare involving health as well as wellness will be supported by intelligent materials and systems so that more people on planet Earth will have a better future. With that, I'd like to appreciate NIT Trichy, Department of Metallurgical Engineering and Material Science, for inviting me to deliver this guest lecture, share my enthusiasm as well as foresight. I hope it helps you to build your own ideas for the future. Thank you so much.
So thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir, for such a wonderful and informative session. I'm sure each of us has lots to take back today. I would request the audience, if they have any questions, they can address our guest today. Any questions?
Yeah, hello, sir.
Hi.
Yeah. Sir, you had mentioned about intelligent materials, sir, biomaterials.
Yeah.
So, are there any intelligent biomaterials to counter the autism problem currently? So, as if you have your
Right now, what I know is there are electrode systems which they call deep brain stimulation, but that is mainly for the paralysis scenarios. For quite close to autism, I do not think any such material systems are available. Yeah.
Okay, sir. So one more question, sir. So you had mentioned that language actually impacts the way things are done. So could you kind of elaborate it?
Yes. Well, if you understand our brain, it it reacts and creates a mental activity. But we use a language to communicate. So we choose the words and communicate. So what happens now is language, which we learn from early childhood, we get used to it, and that forms what they call default mode networks in the brain. So different languages have different words to express uh, our feelings or our understanding. So because we use language and words, our brain develops a default mode networks in that way. Why it does this? Brain wants to be very efficient and wants to use less amount of energy and come to the conclusion very fast. So that's why this default mode networks starts forming once we are started growing from age maybe 3 to 5, and as we become more and more advanced in our age, these default mode networks, which are formed by the language we use as well as other ways we started thinking, and that's why we have an impact of the language.
Thank you, sir.
Well, so I have a doubt, like, let us consider, if we consider a arthritic hip, sir. So a general thing would be to completely replace it. But using technologies like 3D printing and nano robots, why don't we reprint the hip?
தெரியலன்னு சொல்லுங்க. ஆனா காசு வந்து 84 89 24 தவிர்த்து
That's a doubt, sir. Like, why don't we reprint it? And if we cannot, then what are the technological problems which are going to face as of now?
Yeah, so very good. So your question is in arthritis situation. Of course, they have different medical treatments. In the early stage, they only do by medication, but at a much later stage, they try to remove the tissue, and they even sometimes remove part of the bone and replace with some of the implants. Your question is why can't we do 3D printing and support the patients? I think that is the direction where the biomaterial research is happening. One of the challenges right now is 3D printing technology is new, and the regulatory authorities would like to see more evidence so that they can give the approval. So, but I strongly believe in the future, 3D printing involving biomaterials and cells will play a role so that the doctors, clinicians can think of taking an image of the patient's joints and produce a system which mimics closely with the patient, and they would be able to do the clinical procedure. I think that's the direction it is going to happen. But right now, it is not happening. The question is, regulatory authorities are not fully convinced that we have enough safety and efficacy information. But research is happening in that direction.
So, are traditional heat treatments useful for improving performance of devices, biomedical materials?
Yes, the heat treatment's definitely necessary, and then Traditional materials still will be there. The reason is, for example, if you want to replace a hip joint, uh, you certainly need a combination of a metallic alloy and a ceramic and a plus a plastic because of the functionality of that. It is a load-bearing implant, and traditional materials are not going to go away in the biomedical field. They will still be there, and to make these materials useful, first point is traditional materials in the normal day-to-day life and engineering, there are millions of materials. But in the biomedical field, only very few materials are actually approved. So that means the same traditional materials, if you use heat treatments and surface coatings, you can now make them more suitable for the several biomedical applications. I strongly believe the heat treatment and further surface modification of the existing materials will continue to be there.
So there are some questions in the chat.
Yes, I saw that one. There's a question from AN. Okay, let me see how I, yes, absolutely. Okay. I'm now scrolling all those questions and I will go one by one. Okay. So there's one from our traditional heat treatments useful for improving performance of the devices by Navaneet. I just answered that one. So next question is, how will the implants of electrical device inside the body get energy to function? Okay, so the question is, there are implants in the body and then those require electrical energy. What is the source? For those who are not familiar with the field, I give one example. There is something called deep brain stimulation, where people with epilepsy and other such disorders, they implant a small device which is called deep brain stimulator. They put it inside the body, but it is powered by electrical energy. And the function of the electrical energy is to produce electrical signals and send them to the tissues of the human body so that there is a right response is created. So now the question is, what is the source of this electrical energy? That is a battery. So they use very small battery systems, and so they generate the electricity just like the battery we use in the cell phones. In the same way they use batteries, but could be a different type of batteries based on the cost as well as the durability needed. Typically, these implants will have batteries with a life of 10 years. So after 10 years, we had to go for the revision surgery and the battery need to be replaced. That is the current methodology. But going forward, the research is going towards harnessing energy from the basic movements of the human body. For example, my heartbeat. As my heart is beating, I could harness the energy from the heartbeat and perhaps put that into the battery, which powers this deep brain stimulator. Not only deep brain stimulator, right now heart pacemakers is another good one example. People with irregular heartbeats, it's very common. They have pacemakers. So those pacemakers again send specific electrical signals to a particular part of our heart, so that the heart rhythm, the way it is pumping the blood, is restored. So that heart pacemakers also has to have battery systems, and again those batteries have a life of 10 years. So in the future, hope is to harness the energy from the human movements as well as certain biochemistry in human tissues, and then put back that energy into driving these devices. So that's what is happening. There is another question from Anirudh. Are there any devices which involve smart materials in the treatment of speech impairment and related problems with the voice box? Yes, answer is yes. Right now, I think in the United States and also in UC Berkeley, they have come up with neural interfaces which are placed inside the head, and they are meant to read the mind and synthesize the speech, and the speech can be created. Um, so I believe that is one. But if you are saying if there is a problem with the vocal cord from the mind or the brain, they could synthesize and they could have a speaker that would give out the synthesized voice. So the answer is that's already happening, and such devices are there in the USA. So, sir, can you please tell us about a cochlear implant? That's from the Karthik. So, cochlear implant is essentially uh, mimics the function of our ears. How does the ear work? Sound waves impinge on the tympanic membrane. There is a thin membrane that inside the inner ear. That membrane fluctuates based on the sound, and that fluctuations are picked up by cells. These are living cells. You could call them neuronal cells, and these cells communicate the signal by electrochemical signaling process. And when those signals from the ear connected to the brain decodes it as what kind of sound it is. Is it a music? It is a noise? Is it a language somebody spoke? So it can decipher it. So now the question is, what does a cochlear implant do? There are many designs. There are some that pick up the signals from outside and then put it inside the head. The other one is they interrogate at the neuronal level, understand signals, and then put back the signals into the head so that the person can make sense of it. So that's how cochlear implants work. Okay. Then there is a question from Nila Nutala. Sir, is there a possibility that biomaterials may enhance humans' physical and mental capabilities? This is a far-sighted question, has also ethical implications. My belief is yes. It's now people are able to tissue engineer parts of the brain. So some mini brains are already grown in the laboratory. Yeah. So small brains, you can grow them in the laboratory. They are basically grown using biomaterials and cells. In addition, you could also have these neural interfaces that would enhance your mental abilities. So I believe that is happening in terms of scientific research and innovation. But will that be allowed into a common practice? There could be ethical issues where the regulatory bodies as well as the public would have their own decision whether such things should be allowed or not. But the direction is in that way. You had mentioned that batteries are used for providing energy to electrical devices. However, regular batteries are composed of lithium. Won't it be toxic? How are they other materials used for these batteries specifically? So it is Srinivas who asked about the toxicity issues of the batteries. One thing is in designing these biomedical devices, there would be a lot more emphasis given on the packaging of the battery, so that there are polyurethane coatings and other coatings they give. They will ensure nothing is leaked from the battery into the human body. So main principle there is to design a packaging system which is robust, which is tested, and which is durable in the harsh biological environment of the human body. Sir, could you elaborate more on electrospinning? That is from Karthik. So electrospinning is a very simple concept. As the word says, electro means electrical energy. Spinning means you are spinning at a particular speed. What it means is, if a material, especially a polymer, if I want to draw into very thin fibers or make a very small particles, what I do is I prepare a polymer solution. For example, you imagine this water as a polymer solution, and if I apply a very high voltage, maybe about 15 kilovolts or 20 kilovolts of the voltage, there would be electrical charges that will build up in the polymer. Because of these electrical charges, the polymer solution starts spinning. So when it is spinning, it becomes smaller and smaller. That means you form the fibers. So this concept is very simple. If you understand cotton candy, which some of the students here must have tasted, cotton candy is sold in most of the functions in India. It's different colors of candies are available. For example, white candy, pink candy, and many others. So this candy machine, if you look at it, is essentially electrospinning concept. So I guess I covered all the questions. Now, any questions left? Okay.
So one more question has been added now, sir.
Okay. I will
Yes.
Um, okay. Readings. This is from Siddharth. He said, "Sir, there is an enormous investment on research of eternal life. What are your views on this possibility, and how science can play a vital role?" So, well, it's I'm giving a talk to the people in India, and in India, India is known to be the deeply spiritual. So the eternal life and how that is described in India is very deep and very broad based. And for example, for the people, students, for their knowledge, I just elaborate the question. When we say eternal life, he is talking about life beyond the current life. If you can say life beyond the current life, which means after the present life or the death of the present life, how do we continue to stay on? It's a very deeply scientific, not scientific, spiritual. My understanding from people who understood the subject, then you would have to understand the concepts of soul. Maybe you have to understand the concepts of consciousness. These definitions are not uniform. In the scientific world, as well as philosophical world, and the spiritual world, and non-believers, the definitions are very broad. And I spend a lot of time trying to understand their definitions. So far, I do not have a clear understanding what they're saying, but for the benefit of giving the best of my understanding, let's start the other way. If you look at us, we are definitely made of materials, but materials alone would not make us alive. There is something called life force or energy. When these things come together in a specific way, we become alive. At the same time, we are aging with time. But people can say that's a physical body is aging, but your innate life force or energy is not aging. Similarly, if you identify yourself with a soul or a self, they also say it is not aging. So that means your identity is maintained with that, and then you carry on from the present life to the next life, for those who believe in those concepts. But there is other way to look at it. If we are made of energy, and if we apply the basic principles of science, which says that energy and matter can be convertible. So that means energy converted into matter, matter can be converted into energy, and there is also a quantum concept which talks about the duality, where you have a particle, you also have a wave. Particle and wave is dual, so until you probe, wave would not become a particle. But when you probe it, then the particle reveals itself. So when you apply quantum concept to the concept of life force or soul, and then you take it forward, one way to say you have the permanency, because you are not actually totally destroying the totality. Maybe you are still continuing as a matter, of maybe a minute level, or as an energy, and then it is reassembling and becoming part of the afterlife. Then you could also talk about consciousness, which is a deep subject for this. There are two concerns, the concepts. They say consciousness is there, and then that becomes part of you when you take in the birth. Best way to understand is, let's say if there's a bottle, there is air around it. When air gets trapped inside the bottle, it's inside the bottle. So you have a consciousness. But when the bottle is opened up, the consciousness becomes part of the bigger consciousness. So it's a question of what you like to accept, what you like to believe, or what you like to verify. But your question is, how does the material science can play a vital role? Well, my belief is in material science, there's a lot of interesting concepts, especially when you go down to the subatomic particle physics. What fascinates me is you can now imagine massless electrons, massless particles, which are traveling at speeds you cannot imagine, and they are faster than light speed, and they can pass through even a densest system like Earth. They can pass through the whole Earth mass, these massless particles. That's what the concepts in particle physics have said. And you also look at the Higgs particle, which talks about the fluctuations in the waves that creates the particle. So, in other words, material science, which is the deep level, has a lot there for us to understand the nature, and then from there see how we can build our better understanding of eternal life. So it is not a conclusive answer, but so far what I understood, the best of the human knowledge is that we know a lot, but we still do not know everything. Humans have the limit of knowing everything. They do not yet know everything, but I think in the future we have even deeper and better understanding. But can I use material science to understand the nature? I think that is the best science tool available, because material science is a multidisciplinary. You can bring the concepts of chemistry, biology, engineering, computer science, even the social science and quantum mechanics and everything. And then you understand material science differently and deeply. And then you now take those concepts to the life and nature. I'm very sure we will be able to understand the concepts of current life and future life. Sorry, it's a long answer because it's a question of that nature.
I hope each and everyone's queries are addressed. I once again express my heartfelt gratitude for taking out your time from your busy schedule to address us. I thank each and every member present today for their kind cooperation throughout the event. I'm confident that you must have all have enjoyed and learned a lot from this edifying session. Thank you once again, sir.
Thank you, and I wish everyone all the best and a bright future. And thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.